is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone to our members community meeting for April 2017 for Building Smart Canada. Oh, my controls aren't working. Susan, are you able to?
Yeah, it says you have keyboard and mouse. Try again.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'll start again. So welcome everyone to our members community meeting for April 2017 for Building Smart Canada. Our meetings are brought to you each month by our members committee, Susan Keenliside and Carl Villette, as well as our communications committee, Eric Poirier, and myself, Claudia Corziorto. If you have any questions or suggestions, please contact us via email at information@ibc-bsc.ca. Today, Susan and John Dickinson and David Watson, all Canadian delegates for Building Smart International, will provide an update on the recent international summit in Barcelona, Spain, including developments with IFC, Building Smart data dictionaries, and other open BIM progress. This is a GoToWebinar. You are all on mute. If you have any questions, you may raise your hand or type a question into the chat bar. Eric will field questions at the end of the presentation.
Donc ça c'est pour notre communauté francophone. Comme d'habitude, on essaye de tout faire dans les deux langues. Ce qui est pratique ou non pratique, on est toujours en train de regarder ça. Mais on voulait que vous sentez bien à l'aise de poser vos questions en français. Puis aussi, si vous avez des questions selon le contenant que vous n'avez pas compris en anglais, on pourrait même traduire à la fin aussi.
So an update on our members community. Building Smart Canada now has 496 members across Canada and internationally. The Building Smart Canada affiliates program is growing. We now have launched the Toronto BIM community, and coming soon is the Atlantic, Winnipeg, and Saskatchewan affiliates. And we encourage you to become an affiliate if you aren't already one in an area near you. Our goal is to build a national network of excellence for Canada's built environment. The BIM in Canada Best Practice Online Forum beta version is launched. We're very excited about this free resource available to all industry stakeholders, supported by industry experts. So we encourage you to visit the forum, read the posts, join the conversation, and provide us feedback. We already have 110 members and 147 posts. There's links from the Building Smart website as well as the affiliate group websites, and you can find the forum at forum.buildingsmartcanada.ca. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Susan, John, and David.
Thanks, Claudia. So again, as Claudia mentioned, we are updating you on what has recently happened at the semi-annual technical summits for Building Smart International. These technical summits have multiple streams, and it's where, as you would imagine, the technical standards are developed. So this happened the first week of April in Barcelona. So a few points of interest. It's definitely a growing community. In Barcelona this time round, there were almost 350 people from 34 countries. You can also look at the Twitter handle there and see some of the conversations that happened. And as well, you can follow the buildingSMART International Twitter handle. So as mentioned, also the membership is growing, not just the attendance to the summits. The chapters in the top right-hand corner, new strategic members, international members, standards members are all highlighted with the red box, as well as some of the sponsors on the right-hand side for different activities, such as a building and infrastructure room, buildingSMART data dictionary, as well as BCF, BIM collaboration format. buildingSMART International has, for quite some time now, had engagement with other standardization bodies or national and client programs around the world. A few are listed here. Specifically, when it comes to standards bodies, they are directly related with an MOU to CEN, that's the European Commission for Standards, OGC, Open Geospatial Consortium, and now a new one is the ETIM. And some of the national and client programs, you might recognize a few of them there. So of course, buildingSMART is founded on open digital standards. It's the home of Open BIM. The requirements entail open shareable machine readable data. There's a lot in that sentence, but getting to a machine readable state, being able to interoperate is the bottom line. Good data is essential, but what is good data? This is part of the definition as well within an IDM or MVD situation, as well as living with legacy. So different legacy formats, different legacy practices, different legacy standards. With the bottom line, good data requires open standards. One highlight is a new MOU signed for industry foundation classes, specifically for roads. There are certainly a lot of activities happening in the infrastructure stream, whether it's road or rail or bridge or tunnel. So the signing in the last few weeks there for road is a big advancement forward, big step forward, with a number of national level players now collaborating to develop the IFC for road extensions. Every time we have a summit which is hosted by a local chapter, there's always a day at the end called Industry Day. And at the Industry Day in Spain there, the Spanish Minister of Infrastructure committed to Open BIM. This was a big step forward. They had the National Minister of Infrastructure as well as the local Catalonian Minister for Infrastructure that came and made speeches and presentations to make that commitment. So for the Spanish chapter and for Spain, that was a very exciting moment for them. On the private sector side, FC Barcelona, the football club of Barcelona, also has made a major commitment to Open BIM, specifically using IFC as a long-term strategic decision. They're going through major renewal projects for a new smaller scale stadium, as well as a complete redevelopment of their main campus. Everyone was very excited by their leadership, and they're moving things forward on the Open BIM side of things. Deutsche Bahn also is committed to Open BIM. This is dealing mostly with rail and rail across multiple European countries there. As you can see, there are a number of projects listed on the right-hand side in which they're going to pilot out IFC for rail, basically. And they were able to give a main presentation at the plenary, and it's very exciting to see this level of effort going into making sure that open standards are in place, that they work, and that they're part of the long-term strategic goals major organizations like this. A company that we would recognize their name here in Canada, Lafarge. Lafarge Holcim also is a new strategic member for buildingSMART International. They do have a commitment to Open BIM, and they will specifically work with the data dictionary. So David can mention a little bit afterwards when he talks about the data dictionary, but between the data dictionary and product data library for the data templates, this is a big commitment, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with them. We have reached out, and we will probably be bringing you a presentation from them directly, considering their operations in Canada, so you can be aware of what they have in the works. We also have a call for regulators to join buildingSMART Canada. Specifically in the regulatory room, they're looking at e-permitting, automated code checking, and e-submissions. There are quite a few countries and organizations that are involved in this, that have been doing research and testing and applied, applied learning for quite some time. There's a lot of lessons learned. And so we continue to look for the right fit in Canada who would like to be a part of this and learn for what they need themselves. Coming up soon, opening May 1st, will be the next round of BIM Awards 2017. It's important to know that this is for all of industry practitioners and clients, not just for buildingSMART members. The focus is looking at how open standards are fixing or improving an interoperability problem. It doesn't have to be an entire project, end to end, not even an entire phase. It can focus just specifically on one workflow that has worked for your project. And any size of project, small, medium, large, there's no restriction on that either. And so we will also put out a communication coming out in our newsletter for the May version. And you'll have until the middle of August to submit. I've been working with the jury and the team preparing for the awards. I've looked over the submission requirements, and it's not very onerous. I really encourage, if you have a project that has used open standards in any way, shape, or form, to definitely make a submission. What was new this year as well is that BSI has launched a fellowship program. And so if you're not familiar with the community, buildingSMART and the development of IFC, for example, has been ongoing for more than 20 years. And there have been some experts that have really put a lot into the organization and into seeing this getting over the hump of interoperability through. And so they finally released this fellowship program that gives recognition to all of those experts that have contributed significantly to the organization. So for the first round, you can see here there were, at the gala dinner, 17 inaugural inductees. They do receive a gold lapel pin, recognizing them as fellows now. And moving forward each year, they will have more fellows inducted into the fellowship program. One key takeaway that we're very proud of is the number of people that came to us really impressed with our roadmap that we have. They've downloaded it, they've looked at it, it's been very helpful to them, of what they tell me, to develop their own roadmap. And they continue to want to learn more of how much research went into this roadmap, because they're all very impressed. So we're very proud of the team that put that together, led by Eric Poirier, and we continue to get lots of interest in that, and as mentioned, rave reviews. So with that, I'll hand it over to John Dickinson to talk about more on the technical side of what's been happening and what came out of the summit. So John, you now have keyboard and mouse control. You can advance your slides.
That's awesome. I hope that works well, and I hope I come through clearly. I guess the first thing I want to say is that what we found here is that the technical stuff, the stuff that's going on behind the scenes is really, really behind the scenes, and the technical stuff is the stuff I've been highly engaged with. But we're seeing a growing need for this sort of thing. So because buildingSMART International has grown, as Susan pointed out, BIM use has definitely grown worldwide, and governments have increased the use of BIM for infrastructure. We're seeing a lot of pressure and a lot of growth in that area. And we are really looking for more people who could get interested or engaged on the technical side, because at those meetings that we were attending in Barcelona, there were 5 or 6 streams of meetings going on, and there were just 3 of us trying to stay on top of this stuff. And I can't really bring back everything that came out of it. But there are some significant technical things that people will see going forward, or some of the impacts of the technical side of things that I would like to highlight. I'm trying to click, come on, click. There we go. So the first thing is IFC 4 has been out since March 2013, and it is currently the ISO standard. It's actually up for some update at this point in time. In 2015, there was an addendum that was added, and in 2016, there was a further addendum. The IFC 4 Addendum 2 is en route to being an ISO standard at this point in time. What's significant about this is that there are quite a few tools out there that have adapted and implemented IFC 4, but none of them have been certified. And I'll speak to that in a moment. But that sort of stuff is actually progressing forward. The big thing that we are seeing right now is that, as I said, we are beginning to see that, oops, I think that note is incorrect. I'll have to modify it later. But the IFC 4 Addendum 2 is being put forward to become a draft international standard under ISO. And that takes about 9 months, and then we can expect to see it turn into an ISO, a full-fledged ISO standard. The other thing that we should note, and I'm trying, click up, here we go. IFC 5 is going to be the next major anticipated release after IFC 4.1. 4.1 is set the sort of basis or foundation to represent that we can build IFC 5 on. 4.1 captures in alignment elements and some of the terrain modeling sort of stuff. And without that information, we were unable to advance IFC 5, which covers bridge, tunnels, road, and rail. But that is now actually moving through the standards process within buildingSMART International. Oh, that worked, good. IFC 4 certification. As I mentioned already, the certification up to this point has been focused on IFC 2X3, but now IFC 4 certification is expected to start imminently this summer. And it's going to start out with the reference view, model view definition. Many people who are online here now are probably familiar with the coordination view, the old sort of catch-all view that was initially started out to allow different disciplines to coordinate with each other so that they're building models that don't physically clash in the real world. The reference view is providing much of the same thing, with some simplified geometry, some simplifications of the information that's been passed around from the original format, but sufficient to allow design and coordination activities to be done based on reference view models provided by other design stakeholders in the team. The design transfer view will be certified later. They're going to start out with the reference view because that has the most immediate impact, the most immediate demand. That's architects. There will be export. The certification will be looking at export capabilities from an architectural perspective, structural perspective, and the mechanical, electrical, plumbing perspectives. And import is all the tools are kind of expected to be able to bring in everything that can be exported by any of the others, though in some cases, some of the information that gets conveyed may not make any sense, so may not actually be represented directly in the tool, but it shouldn't cause the tool to fail. To do all of this, they've gone ahead and created a new tool set. They now actually are using some of the more advanced technical tools that are being developed by buildingSMART International, the model view definition XML files that allow them to create or encapsulate small test examples. and they are working on, or will be leveraging, the BIM collaboration format, which was a subject of an earlier presentation here at the buildingSMART Canada's member community meetings. They'll be using that tool to communicate back to the developers what things worked and what things did not work so well. And the results will be recorded in the cloud. So there will actually be web pages that will be put up by buildingSMART International with the information as the testing results will get summarized and encapsulated there. They are still looking for more testers in different regions because they're interested in the language issues, if things get messed up in language or interpretations, and for different tools that are planning to implement IFC 4. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to Susan, David, or I. We'll be happy to try and connect you with the right people at buildingSMART International. Having looked at the current state of affairs, I want to look at the future state of affairs for IFC. IFC is really that schema, that language that goes behind everything that makes BIM, open BIM possible. And its future is it's gradually growing in terms of the scale and scope and the nature, the ways we teach, or record the models and the languages. The original IFC was all based in STEP standards that were very familiar for those who were in the manufacturing or construction sectors back in the 80s. And they're based basically on these STEP standards that most of them are ISO standards these days. In the 90s, XML came along, and different tools wanted to work with XML libraries. It was a little more transparent. There aren't many STEP standard software libraries out there that you can use to access STEP models and thus IFC models. But if you had an IFC model or an XML, IFC XML model, XML tools built into Java, into C#, into any other language you can possibly imagine would be able to parse that information. And because of the nature of XML, it was quite accessible. You can actually query and transform what you have in the model into other entities, other forms. And that would allow software outside the architectural, engineering, and construction sectors to work with that information. JSON came along very recently, and that's being particularly valuable format for representing information for work with database-based software. And if you imagine an IFC model or a model of a facility, even if you're not thinking about IFC, it can be chunked down into a concept that is very, very translatable to database context. So JSON is not yet standardized, but there is some talk about how to do that and make it a standard future representation of BIM models or IFC models. And another one that is on a strong path to coming out now is OWL or RDF. And that's well, RDF is Resource Descriptor Framework, and I can't remember what OWL is, Object Web Libraries or something like that. Basically, these are the technologies that are being used to make the deep or interlinked or linked or semantic or knowledge web that we are familiar with today. They are the sort of fundamental components or approach that is being used to make a very interlinked knowledge-rich environment out on the web. Most of these standards have been driven by the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, and there are quite a few software implementations and tools now that can consume files that are represented using OWL and RDF. Let me just see. Sorry, my clicking isn't working so well here. There we go. What's important to remember here is that there is no difference between these, the raw content that are in these models, but rather the way we've written it or the way we've expressed the models makes them more open and accessible to other tools and platforms. And that is a very good thing if we are trying to get the information out of the construction sector and make it available to, let's say, decision makers in the construction sector or in the government, or relate it to user occupancy maps or energy uses or emergency scenario planning, that sort of stuff. And click. Okay. Another key element, something that you hope to, or many people hope to see in the future, is what we call micro MVDs at this point in time. Right now, when you actually get a model, you get it in a model view definition. You don't get the whole model per se, you get a particular model view that is representative of the particular sort of transaction and the information you want to do it. Coordination was the 2x3 one. It became a little bigger and bigger over time because people kept adding things in there. There was a FM handover view that's a bit dated now, but they're looking to update. Today's new formats under IFC 4, the design transfer view and the reference view. They take a lot of effort to develop, maintain, and certify applications for this, and it's done at the buildingSMART International level. But they attempt to kind of gather together very large sort of overarching perspective of reusable information that's contextually consistent. But if you are working on a project and you just want to get a subset of this information that's relevant to what you need, you still have to kind of pick the best view that's available and work with that, and make sure that your tools can work with that high-level view. What people are clamoring for or beginning to ask for are ways that can get a view that is suited for their particular task within a particular project. And that's where MVD XML comes into play. It's a way of expressing or writing a subset of the schema that will be used, and it allows you to start generating something like these micro MVDs. So this is not broadly available now, but this is the sort of view that they're taking towards the future. You want to be able to get incrementally, almost query-like information that you want. And if you find that there's a lot of use or there's a lot of uptake, let's say door schedules or a particular energy subset of energy information, these views that get created by users, just project coordinators or other people on projects out in the real world, can be eventually assembled and grouped and rolled into bigger ones. And that allows expressing exchange requirements more appropriately for real world scenarios, and even allows for adapting or addressing regional or project specific requirements. If they really take off, if they really do well, the whole idea is that would allow the community a way of rolling that information back into buildingSMART International without having to go through so many committees, but rather seeing it in use in industry and then rolling it back because it's actually functionally accessible. One thing I should point out, remember I mentioned IFC OWL or the OWL format, that there's a movement to standardize. In its current format, it offers a mechanism for query-based definition of micro MVDs. So it's actually already using semantic web standards to support much of this sort of perspective going forward. If it works well for that, then we can get into linking in external resources and even doing reasoning based on open standard information. The goal for the future for buildingSMART International at the technical side is really to look at how do we make this pull-based. Like I said, we have developers who have to go through a lot of effort. They put together these data into existing sort of forms and tools, and we've got users who actually try and take those tools and apply them in industry. Now we have developers looking at making some open tools, toolkits and APIs that allow software developers in other industries or users who are working on projects to define their own standards-based implementations. So we are basically trying to break that barrier between the traditional AEC industry and the rest of the world, because the two don't stand apart in reality. They shouldn't stand apart in these sorts of access to the information they need. And at this point in time, I will turn it over to David.
Thanks, John. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to discuss the buildingSMART Data Dictionary and events that happened in Barcelona. Most of you may not understand exactly what the Data Dictionary is, and so I'm going to spend 1 or 2 slides just to give you an overview of the technology, what it is, and what it is intended to do. And then I'll go over some of the advancements that we covered in the meetings in Barcelona. Whoops, a little too far, too fast. Okay, so I'll start a little bit with what is the data dictionary. It's basically a real database. It's a database that exists, accessible on the internet, and this database contains what we call semantic definitions. And if you look up that word semantic, you'll find it's basically it's a concept or an idea that has established relationships with other ideas. And the concept there is to define what the things are that we're trying to communicate in building models. So how it works generally is that each concept or idea is given a unique ID number, and that ID number can be then assigned many names, which we would call synonyms in any language. And the concepts themselves are defined both by the definition that can be given, which is language dependent, but also by the relationships and how it relates to other concepts. And so to give you one simple example, a concept of a thing like a table can be connected to the material that the table is made of, which could be considered a property, and that relationship between the material it's made of and the table itself is, of course, an object property relationship. And so these relationships, there's a number of them, are all defined in the data dictionary structure. So the data dictionary is part of what we call the buildingSMART International Triangle, which means that in order for successful transport and receipt of BIM data, we need three things. We need a container to contain the data that's being transmitted, and that's covered by the IFC model that John just covered. The data dictionary really covers the meaning of the data that's being transmitted. And what I mean by that is that if you put data into a container and you send it to someone else, someone could read that, and in most cases today, when you read that data, it's read and interpreted at the human level. So it's, for the most part, language dependent. And this is what the data dictionary is trying to get over, is using these IDs and a collection of synonyms to make sure that the receiver, when they receive this data, interpret the meaning of the data inside properly. And the last part of the triangle is the IDM, Information Delivery Manual, or Information Delivery Specification, as it's now becoming known as, takes the first two and models the process. So when is the data sent, who sent it, what's expected as a reply, that stuff is being modeled by this other process standard. So to summarize, and to give you an idea of what the data dictionary is not, when we first started explaining this concept about what it is, and that it's a database and it has elements and properties, some people took the leap to assume that it's a database of products or product information. I want to stress that that's not what this is. It's basically a very high-tech dictionary. It doesn't contain product information. It could contain values, but those values are typically designed to define what something is rather than define an instance of a bit of data. So the data dictionary itself is accessed using an application programming interface. So basically, it's a web portal that software can interrogate. It can ask data dictionary questions and get responses back. That's its primary use. You can browse it directly and just have a look at what content is in there by going to that URL that's on the screen, bsdd.buildingsmart.org. And you can find more information about the data dictionary generally on the buildingSMART website under standards in that folder. So what would you use this data dictionary for? It's all of its power is really derived by use, storage, and communication of the globally unique identifier. So as I mentioned, all these concepts have identifiers, and if everyone in the industry were to use these identifiers, then the data that's being transmitted back and forth between parties would automatically be recognized without the possibility of being misinterpreted by anyone. It's used for semantics, in other words, to store and relate the relationships of concepts with other concepts. For example, to find out what properties belong to an object, how objects might be classified, any documents that might be related to those objects, that sort of thing. And because the objects are uniquely identified and there's an instance of only one, we can actually have multiple contexts. So an object like a pump can have one context for the guy who's installing it, and another context for the facility manager who has to maintain it. But the same unique ID would be used in both cases. One of the chief motivators to put this together was actually driven in Europe by its translation capabilities. The fact that we have the ability to assign synonyms to the same concept, the same idea, logically extended itself. So and you can not only add multiple English synonyms, but you can actually add other languages, so names in other languages. And that's actually one of the primary motivators today for a lot of the European countries to get on board. Europe, as most of you know, deals with quite a few languages, and because our economy is kind of going global, the Asian cultures are also getting in, and certainly any other language that's difficult to translate. I should point out, for if there's any English-French translators in the group, that this translation service is really limited to not translating documents, but translating the names or the identification of the objects or properties that you're modeling. So it'll never become a translator per se. There's too many nuances in grammar for it to do that, but it certainly would translate the name or label of things. So some examples of what the data dictionary would be used for would be to translate any model data. You could, in theory, submit a model that was generated here in Canada in English and send it to somebody in Quebec. They could open it up and view the entire model in Quebec French, as one example of the power that this technology could do. If you wanted a list of those objects in one classification in one country here in Canada, we could send that model to Norway, and the Norwegian company could open it up, view the terms for all the objects and properties in Norwegian, and sort them according to the Norwegian classification. So these are some examples of how you'd use the data dictionary. A little bit on the history. It was created in 2006 between two organizations that had separate libraries of their own. They quickly realized the enormity of the task, especially in the translation part, and decided it should be a global activity. That activity was moved to buildingSMART International around 2012. It was operated by a steering committee and a technical working group, and it's continued to be operated with those two groups. Most of the activities happening right now in what we've called pilot projects, they're actually user projects or user meetings that are conducted over Skype. There's two every week. There's one for North America and Europe, and a separate one for North America and Australasia, because of the time zone differences. Europe and Australasia are 24 hours or 12 hours apart, so it's difficult to get them together. And of course, we have personal meetings every technical summit, so it's twice a year. So this is my attempt at sprucing up my presentation. It's a quick snapshot of the pilot project participants that happen to be attending there. Brigitte, the gal in the center, is the prime motivator. She chairs most of them, and there I think are 4 or 5 countries represented there between the 8 or 10 people. So in Barcelona, what we focused on was, since we've used the data dictionary to store concepts or IDs, they can store elements and they can store properties. It's logical that we could associate IFC classes with those things, so that to give us some extra functionality. So that's where a lot of the focus on is, in getting the IFC classes into the data dictionary. It's actually being modeled as an independent language. So if we have something like a table that's a table in English, in IFC there could be a class called IFC table that would just simply be put in there as a separate language, and that functionality would enable a software who is trying to manipulate a model, if it wants to export that model to IFC, you don't have to, or a software developer doesn't have to pick the appropriate IFC class. It could be done by the data dictionary. It could extend the IFC by defining object types to a much more detailed level. The IFC classes really have just enough entities to encapsulate most of the information it needs, and for the most part, today and traditionally, the identification of the data being exchanged is language dependent. So in other words, you label the object for what you really want it to mean, and then the IFC class is used to transmit it. The data dictionary could be used to uniquely identify the data that's in an IFC class to much more greater detail. So as of today, all of the classes are actually now in the data dictionary. Property sets were added, I think, last year, and we're now trying to put in quantity sets. I'm sorry. We experimented using, there's a software tool that's used to automatically generate IFC documentation, and we're planning to use that tool as a way to maintain the IFC classes using the data dictionary technology. So it's something for a management tool on buildingSMART International end. We can use the data dictionary to store and support these MVDs and micro MVDs. So it would be one thing to be able to create these MVDs and micro MVDs, but the best way to distribute that information, well, there be two ways. You could post MVD documents or files on the website, but if you want to implement MVDs in software, by far the easiest way would be to put that information in the data dictionary and have software read that information as it needs it. So that's been explored, and of course, one of the biggest advantages I mentioned already was being able to access or discover which IFC classes would be most appropriate for an object that you're concerned with. So the next subject that we discovered in Barcelona was a new idea, well, relatively new, within a year or two, this linked data concept. And the idea behind linked data is basically that if you can have information in a variety of places and stored in a variety of formats, and that information has semantic information in it, that you can link all of those together to make the information more accessible. Whereas traditionally somebody would have to go through and use keyword indexes and other means. This is a far more accurate and quality way of being able to access information that's in a variety of formats. The data dictionary is being looked at by these experts who are working on linked data technology to use the data dictionary as an ontology, as one of the tools in its toolbox to help this linking abilities. And the process itself, this linked data project, is being driven primarily by the civil engineering sector in the Netherlands, who feel the most pressing need to develop the technology. We noticed in the meetings that some see it as competing technology to the data dictionary, but in fact, it should be able to consumer use that data or that knowledge that's encompassed in the data dictionary and add it to its other capabilities to extend it and improve its ability. And so, in fact, in my mind, it complements the data dictionary. Another major subject that was discussed was product data, and I believe it's because in the industry, product information and structured product information is becoming critical. People are realizing that product information that are kept in PDFs or in proprietary formats are not very accessible unless a human actually reads it and interprets what's in there. So there are major pushes by a number of different players, especially in Europe, to standardize on this. And the data dictionary is being used as a vehicle to uniquely identify what type of products those are, what type of properties are being assigned to those, and how to store them properly so that they can be transmitted using IFC and also using the process IDM standards. There's three types of product data. There's that you're concerned with. There's product data catalog, where you want to store, a manufacturer will want to store everything they know about the product, which would include any number of model numbers, sizes, parametric data, we call that. The next step would be building templates for product manufacturers or these library databases to develop a template for it so that anybody could insert properties and automatically identify the types of products you're talking about and the properties that are assigned to it with these globally unique IDs using the data dictionary and automating that process. So this is where this data template concept comes through. And of course, discussing the exchange of product data, whether it's catalog data or whether it's actual data for a specific product. This is a short list of all of the projects that are currently either actively using or planning to use data dictionary technology. You'd find it about, I won't go through them in detail. I can certainly do that if you're interested. About half of them are dealing with product information, storage, and communication. There's a BIM server in there. There's a couple of classifications that are concerned with classifying model objects. They're using the data dictionary to store and use their classifications appropriately. The other one I'd like to point out is the bottom one. Austrian University created a plugin for Revit that automatically uses the buildingSMART data dictionary to query and receive sets of properties for a given object, and it also manages the assigning of those properties to the proper IFC classes so that you can use Revit to export IFC files and the classes show up the way they're supposed to. It's not known at the moment, but I think Autodesk is considering taking this tool that was developed with Austrian University and plugging it into their mainstream product, but I'm not sure if they're planning to do that yet or not. One more slide, but I can't move it yet. Oops. Go back on. There we go. So the last thing, a little bit of less interesting business, but critical nonetheless, was the business aspect. Because the data dictionary is a real consumable service, as opposed to the other standards that buildingSMART International deals with, we also have to consider the business discussion. This real service does require resources to keep up to date. There's both the technical side of keeping the API running, doing bug fixes for the API, and there's also, of course, content management. So there was a discussion in Barcelona about trying to narrow that down. They have come up with a pricing strategy. For the most part, if you just want to view or look at the content, that would be essentially free to the public. We narrowed it down to 3 types of access that people would want to use the service for. Access, which means you just want to look at it. Read access, which means you have a software program that wants to send queries to the database and get replies or answers back in a read-only format, and read-write access. And then we also tried to narrow down partly to establish a user's ability to pay for the service into public customers, community customers like organizations, professionals, basically companies, and then commercial, which would be a software developer who is using the data dictionary as part of their core software function, and they're reselling it. So that, in a nutshell, is what's happened with the data dictionary. This topic of the data dictionary is so large I could easily fill a few of these sessions talking about it. So if any of you are interested in seeing more about the data dictionary and how it works, please contact the members forum. With that, I'm done. I'll hand the floor back to Claudia.
All right, and maybe I can take over. Thank you guys for the excellent presentation. Really a lot of interesting stuff going on. Are there any questions from the people in attendance? I have one question here around how is IFC addressing computational design, or is Dynamo have any IFC capabilities? Does anybody want to take a stab at that question?
I'll take a stab because I think that falls more in my court than anywhere else. But Dynamo, as I understand it, is a product where relationships, parametric and otherwise, and mathematical relationships are used to create shapes and forms in design that are otherwise would be really hard to craft individually. So you can get these nice sculpted surfaces or progressions of surfaces across things like that. I've seen a few demonstrations for architectural design of sweeping roof styles, for instance, or non-rectilinear building facades. IFC 4 has built in some new capabilities in terms of parametrics and the ability to represent parametrics, but I think even more are going to be coming with IFC 5. The whole idea behind the design transfer view is actually to preserve those parametric features so that different geometry engines in different platforms can load in a model that is being shared through IFC design transfer view, and then continue to edit it instead of having sort of dumbed down geometry. But there are quite a few hurdles with respect to that for the implementers, because everybody is using a different solid modeling or not so solid modeling kernel underneath the hood. With respect to Dynamo, it doesn't really make so much difference. Dynamo works on the computational engine that goes inside or through an API on the computational engine for, let's say, Revit or for ArchiCAD or something like that. It's actually working through the APIs of your software system, but to preserve the richness and nature of that design, there is beginning to be some feasibility for that, but really that remains a domain that I think is beyond the extent of and capabilities of IFC, because it's more about sharing the existent model as opposed to the engine behind the model. I hope that answers the question.
Actually, that's a very that was more than a stab, John. I guess in terms of yes, there's the aspect of formology and forms. There is also a huge power behind all the parameters and reading the data in the model that you can do through Dynamo. I know there are some packages that do attempt to look into the IFC stuff, but again, we're talking on the property level, and as you mentioned, it's an API, so it's talking directly to the model itself. So you might not need IFC in that context to really do anything with it. But it would be interesting to see if reinterpreting data and publishing a model and how Dynamo could help maybe give back some of the parameters and the functionalities that you lose through IFC. Maybe that's something that needs more work. Are there any other questions? I don't have any other questions, and we're almost on the hour. So I think we can, if there's any, I'll leave 30 seconds to anybody that would have some further questions, or else I'll hand it back to Claudia to end the meeting. Thank you to the presenters. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, John, and David. Our next monthly meeting is scheduled for May 24th, 2017. And please stay tuned for our monthly newsletters. We encourage you to submit any presentation requests, or if you have any inquiries, to information@ibc-bsc.ca. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next month.